Hey Bison fans, add a little green in your wallet with the NDSU debit card from Gate City Bank. For every card ordered, Gate City Bank donates $10 to NDSU. Get your Gate City Bank Bison debit card today at gatecity.bank/bison or instantly at any location. Gate City Bank, for a better way of life. Member FDIC. Hey everybody, welcome to the latest edition of the Kolpack and Izzo podcast, brought to you by Gate City Bank with the Forum's Jeff Kolpack. I'm Dom Izzo from WDAY Sports. Dakota Marker Week is closing in here. North Dakota State, South Dakota State playing Saturday, 2 o'clock at Dana J. Dykehouse Stadium in Brookings. A sold-out crowd ready to welcome in the Bison as the Jackrabbits have won 22 consecutive football games and looking for a fifth straight win against the Bison. I'll get to all that in a second, but first, I wanted to start our podcast today. For those that follow college athletics, they saw on Wednesday evening, late afternoon, the passing of Hall of Fame basketball coach Bob Knight. And immediately I thought one of my very first road trip I had at WDAY was going to Lubbock, Texas in November of 2006 to cover North Dakota State playing Texas Tech in men's basketball. And Bob Knight, of course, was the coach of the Red Raiders. And it was a close game. The Bison almost won. It was 85-81. Texas Tech ended up winning the game. And I knew you and Mike. I don't even know if I said anything to you.
You were a fresh-faced guy with us.
Because you guys you did the Saturday morning radio show. You guys have been here for a bit. I'm like, all right, I'm still a newbie. I've been at WDAY for like 7 weeks, and I'm still trying to get my bearings on who I'm covering and all that kind of good stuff, right? And lo and behold, okay, we're going to a press conference with Bob Knight, and you asked a question after the game of the Hall of Fame coach about one of his players and his team.
Jarius Jackson was their star guard and had a pretty good first half. It was a 9-point halftime lead. I wrote about it today in inform.com on my remembrances of that day. But after the game, first of all, it was kind of odd that there was a Sports Illustrated reporter in there asking Knight, apparently doing a story on him and Mike Krzyzewski, because Knight was the head coach and Krzyzewski was a player way back in the day. I think that's what it was about. I don't recall what that story was about. But the only access that the SI reporter could get to Knight apparently was to go to the Bison postgame press conference. And so he starts asking a few questions, not many, maybe 2 or 3, if I recall correctly. And about the third or fourth question, it didn't get answered because Knight goes, and I can't swear on there, but he goes, haven't I given you effing enough? And sternly, he said, haven't I given you enough? And I guess that was the end of that. I don't know if I was next or not, but it wasn't long before. And I'd asked about Jarius Jackson. He was 1 of 5 and from the field in the second half, and but he hits a good, calm free. He won the game down the stretch with his free throw shooting. Finished 11 of 12. And so I think they called on me, whatever. I go, Coach, Jarius Jackson was I got about that far into the question. Jackson didn't play well. Next question. Shouted and I went, okay, thanks. I get it. Thank you very much, Coach. But he just was a bully. He's a 6'5" imposing figure who just commanded this bullying presence at the post-game press conference. I mean, that SID had it was all night. Yeah, it was right. If you remember right. I mean, is that what you remember correctly?
I remember that happening okay, so that just happened.
Yeah.
And I had to go back out of the floor because I was waiting. I was going to get Tim Miles live on TV, and I'm pretty sure Miles heard it because as we're getting ready to go on live, he looked at me and goes, so I heard Coach got a little heated in the press conference. And I said, yeah, I think it was a Jeff as well. So, I mean, I had no care for him. He is what he is. I never cared for how he treated people in general, let alone what he did to our profession and how he didn't want to even dignify your question with an answer. You didn't get a follow-up on that, by the way.
I got nothing. Yeah. I was okay, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it, Mr. Knight. But here's what I'll say about him. He won in the 70s, I thought, with a style that was probably appropriate for the age.
Yeah.
He just never adapted to the times.
No.
You can't coach in the 90s in the 2000s and even probably early 90s, late 80s, like you could in the 70s or 60s. That drill sergeant, hardcore, I'm in your face, I'm just going to blow up and belittle you. Yeah. You couldn't do that then.
I'm going to see if I can find
the audio. I'm talking about in the Texas Tech days.
I want to find the audio here that we played. I found this. I found the soundbite that he had for, I don't know. It wasn't you, obviously, who got the question. Let me see if I can play this here during the pod of what he said after the game.
The wrong team won. They out-hustled us. They outplayed us. They outfought us. It was really a shame that we won the game. From the standpoint of somebody watching basketball. Those kids came in and they had hadn't played particularly well against Minnesota and came down here and just had their minds made up that they were really going to play, and they did.
That was from the post-game press conference.
It was a good Bison team. It was Brett Winkleman, Mike Nelson.
Woodside.
Andre
Smith.
Mike Nelson, Andre Smith. It's a team that beat Wisconsin the prior year.
And they would beat Marquette later that season. Think of that week. They played the Gophers and Texas Tech in the same week that year.
And that game was on a Friday night.
It was.
And Saturday, we were on a plane and covered the Dakota Marker game.
Yes, we were. That was my tie-in of that because the Dakota Marker game was the next day back in Fargo. I remember landing the next late morning, early afternoon, like, boy, this is really freaking cool. This is my job. I get to go and fly and cover a Division I men's basketball, and then we got a huge football game. Like, this is,
and not only that, as a Bobby Knight coach team.
This is pretty neat that we get to do this. So I wanted to spend, because I thought of that. I thought of your story even before you tweeted it yesterday, and I wanted to dig up that what we had for sound this morning because I played it on Hot Mic. But interesting guy. Just you're right though. Because I grew up. The first memory I have of him is 1987 because where I grew up in upstate New York, Indiana beat Syracuse. Keith Smart's shot beat Syracuse in the national championship game, and that was the first instance I have of the guy, not knowing anything about his personality until 5 or 6 years later.
Ironically, one of his best friends was Bob Hamill, who covered the team for him, sports writer. I think he's a sports writer from Indianapolis.
Yeah,
was one of his best friends.
I would have lost a lot of money on that if you would have asked me that. So. Let's transition now. We mentioned we're covering the Dakota Marker. We will do it again on Saturday in Brookings. It's a sellout crowd, Kolpack. The Jackrabbits and their fans especially have been waiting for an opportunity like this to get the Bison in their place, knowing SDSU is a favored team in this.
Vulnerable.
And perhaps vulnerable of the Bison to maybe lay the wood down on them on Saturday afternoon. I don't know if that's going to happen, but SDSU has everything going. This is like the Bison had a few years ago. This is what SDSU is right now.
It's going to have to be an upset. I mean, it's going to have. How do you pull an upset like this? Well, it can happen, obviously, and in maybe in a rivalry game, it's more apt to happen. It's possible because maybe you play above. NDSU needs to come out and play with their hair on fire like UND did against them. 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, 3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago. That's what has to happen, and what has to happen is a mistake or two by SDSU that's uncharacteristic. Bison capitalizing on that, and the Bison playing well. Cam Miller's played well. So you look at the matchups, Cam Miller and Mark Gronowski, it's an even matchup. And you got to give the slight edge to Gronowski because he hasn't lost to the Bison and Cam Miller hasn't beaten the Jacks. So it's as simple as that. But most other categories of matchups, defensive line, offensive line, linebackers, secondary.
You name it.
Everything's South Dakota State, except I'll give special teams, and we said this on your TV show earlier this week, I'll give it to NDSU just because Jaden Price is a threat to break one.
The offensive defensive line of North Dakota State is going to have its best game by a wide margin here, Kolpack, for them to win this football game.
Especially defensively, because you can't let the Jacks control the ball, and you have to be disruptive. They have to do something to either make Gronowski uncomfortable or, as Matt Entz says, get him off schedule. A sack here, a strip sack, or something like that. You got to put some doubt in the opponent's team. It can't be 14-0 after a quarter and a half.
You're in trouble there. The Bison, you'll remember the last time they played down in Brookings, Pierre Strong broke one. It was a 75-yard touchdown run. He scored, I want to say, the second or third play of the game. And automatically the Jacks had all the momentum. They got up 24-7 at halftime of that game in Brookings 2 years ago. That's a recipe to get blown out of the building that happens here on Saturday.
Bison historically have not really played well at that field, even when it was
Coughlin
alumni and now Dana J. Dykehouse Stadium. Easton Stick had his worst game of his career down there.
2017.
Steve Walker, the Bison went in undefeated in 2007 and had thoughts of an FBS bowl game.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah, I do remember that. Yes.
If they would have finished 11-0, some extraneous mediocre bowl may have taken them just because of the novelty of the thing.
Yep.
And South Dakota State won that game. And the Bison didn't play well. Steve Walker just had a tough day. It was a long season for NDSU.
The Bison that day had a punt return against them for a touchdown, and they had a punt blocked in that game, similar to what we saw at UND. That's how SDSU won that game.
And that's how NDSU has to turn the tables against SDSU on Saturday. Stuff like that's got to happen.
And they still have yet to get a 100-yard rusher out of the running back spot as we play the 9th game. Now we're in November. You know what I mean? That, to me, is still a product. It's probably not going to happen, Kolpack. I mean, we're 8 games in. If it hasn't happened now, you look at the last 3 opponents, I don't foresee it happening against those 3 teams. Do you?
Well, the trend is no. I guess. Now is when you look at trends, and this is who you are.
Correct. This is what the football team is. And I look at defensively, especially with Will Mostaert's injury, which, granted, Will has been playing better, I think playing a lot more with his Achilles injury, and he's done for the season. Now you're back to a pretty young group up there. Granted, they played a lot of football.
Yeah, I don't think they're young anymore.
And Heisman, but I guess physically they can't match up with SDSU's offensive line. That's the thing.
Well, the offensive line is as old as a professional offensive line. You got 3 guys who are in their 6th year of school. Yeah. 2 are bona fide pro prospects that may be playing in the league next year.
Greenfield and McCormick are that good. Yep.
And I think the other 2 spots, they're not young. I mean, the other guy is like a senior.
No, one of them is
5th-year senior.
Berenson was the Valley Offensive Lineman of the Week last week.
Yeah, and he's a 5th-year senior.
So you just had another guy get offensive lineman.
That's about as
credit.
old as an offensive line as you can find. And old, I mean, as experienced and mature as you could find ever in FCS football.
And they just went to Vermilion and laid the wood on South Dakota in a game that they fell behind 3-rip and then rattled off 37 straight points. I mean, and took all the air out of South Dakota because the Coyotes were coming in playing pretty well.
It's why it's so hard to, I'm sorry to stomp on you. Right. It's so hard to pull off the upset when you're so strong up front.
Right.
It could because you're strong up front. I mean, you're not going to get weaker that game. Maybe it's a missed assignment here and there, I suppose, is possible. But to me, it's like wrestling. You know, when you have a wrestler who's just superior athletically, strength and physical and all that, probably not going to lose. I mean, it's hard to see upsets in wrestling when your opponent is just that much physically better,
stronger. We had a Bison player come by us on Tuesday as we were doing interviews and said to you and I as we're sitting there, anybody can beat anybody.
Well, it's good. I mean, I took that as lighthearted. Good for him. Okay. Good for him. Yeah, I didn't see that as a big deal at all. In fact, I would hope you'd have that mentality.
Right. You need to have that mentality if you want to actually. Belief is 90% of this, isn't it? Mentality.
Well, that would be my question. Do they believe? Yeah. Can the coaching staff put some belief? And the players, can they put it in each other, the belief that they can go down there and win?
I believe Matt Entz has probably circled the wagons on this one to say, okay, everybody on the outside believes we are no shot to win this game.
And we're proud. I'm sure we're part of that.
Yeah.
The fans are part of that. Media's part of that.
Vegas is part of it. I mean, South Dakota State is
what's it at?
11.5-point favorite for the game on Saturday. That seems about right, doesn't it?
We're calling it like we see it, Dom.
Yeah.
And listeners out there, you should expect nothing less from us.
Right. I mean, but everybody has eyes. They've seen what NDSU has done this season, and they've seen what South Dakota State has done. I mean, we're not speaking anything that I haven't seen, you haven't seen on how they've played. Now, are the Jacks unbeatable? No. Montana State scared the heck out of them. Southern Illinois played a really close game with them a couple weeks ago. That's the kind of game plan. That's what they have. The Bison need to execute on Saturday if they want to have a chance to win.
And at least there's a blueprint there. Yes. So you study that film and you see the blueprint on what those two teams did and what they did to maybe quiet down the SDSU offense. So, of course, it's possible.
The biggest thing to me in this the last 4 games, while the Jacks have won, Kolpack, they have 0 turnovers against North Dakota State. In the last 4 games that the Jacks and Bison have played against one another, 0 turnovers. It's as simple as
Didn't
that.
know that.
It's as simple as that. The last time they turned the football over was the Keaton Heidi interception that Josh Hayes had in 2019 in Brookings. Remember that?
No doubt.
You remember that play?
Yes.
How huge that was, because the Bison just got the ball because they forced the Jacks to turn it over, and then
didn't Gibbs get hurt?
Right, he got hurt. They're playing their backup quarterback in that game, and that was the last time the Jacks have turned the football over against the Bison. It's as simple as that to me.
Man, that's an amazing statistic.
Right? I mean, and you can take everything else out of how they've played, and you look. I'll go back to the regular season game here last year at the Dome, where the Bison, I don't think they've played a better half of football in the last 2 years. That first half last year in Fargo against South Dakota State, electric, until the Cam Miller unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, and all the air came out of the Bison after that. 2 plays later, Cole Payton throws the pick, and it was over. The momentum all went to the Jackrabbits after that.
It's kind of a cheesy call by the ref, I thought, because I've seen people do that since.
Yep.
I mean, you shouldn't do it.
Nope.
But it was.
After that, though,
it wasn't like he went over there and just, blatantly, what I want to say,
mock them
or whatever.
In their face. No, but
he was just kind of doing something in air. I mean,
the other part of this too is the quarterback that has played better over the last 4 games has won. Even in 21, Chris Oladokin was the quarterback for South Dakota State when Gronowski was hurt, and Miller threw 2 picks, I want to say, in that game down in Brookings in 2021. That was the story of the game. And NDSU has not been able to run the ball against South Dakota State, Kolpack. That's the other key in my mind. They got to find
You got to do something. Yep. And if you do this first series, 3 runs up the middle,
right.
4 yards, punt.
Look out.
Yep.
It may not, especially because I tend to think, and you've been there way more than I have, Bison fans have always, I thought, travel well to Brookings, but the last 2 times down there, I've seen more SDSU fans come out for this game. It's going to be a sellout on Saturday. This is going to be a sea of blue on Saturday afternoon down there.
I don't get a sense there's a lot of Bison fans going down like before. I know some people I know who are big fans that usually go are not. Maybe the weather has something to do with it. I don't know.
Now the sun's supposed to come out. Have you checked your forecast? It's changed now.
Yeah, Eric said it's in the 50s now.
Yeah, 54 and sunny on Saturday.
But showtime's going to be 30 and cold. That's all I care about.
You and Campbell both did the same thing. She said the same thing to me earlier today about, but at 10 o'clock it's going to be 30 degrees. I'm like, well, okay, but the game's going to be great. So who cares? We'll get through it. It's only an hour.
Is there a Starbucks in Brookings? Campbell and I need to know.
I don't know that off the top of my head.
We may have to bring our own.
Yeah,
that's kind of it's the Saturday morning routine.
Bring your own energy,
Kyle,
right?
I, and Logan need our Starbucks.
You bring your own energy, I would say, in anticipation of what's to come on Saturday. I also look at, when you break down this game, where the Bison special teams, they have the advantage. They need to play on that. They need either it's a block punt, it's a big return, something to steal a possession. I think they need that in the game on Saturday.
Okay, I think we've dissected this game enough. Let's take a little big picture before we leave this podcast. South Dakota State's obviously got the upper hand. What do you do in the next 6, 7, 8 months to try to stop this slide of talent differential?
So I asked Matt Entz that on Monday, because I said, how has this happened? How have they got so good?
The Bison could win and upset, but I'm saying let's look at the big picture here.
Well, recruiting-wise, SDSU's had the upper hand, clearly. Are they getting – the Bison are going after the same guys. NDSU and SDSU, for the most part, are still recruiting the same players. Development seems to be different to me. They found a couple guys, like an Amar Johnson. They found him out of either Missouri or Arkansas. That's a spot the Bison – the same spot they got Pierre Strong out of. There are areas there. That's an area. I think the portal's a big one. SDSU has 3 starters out of the portal. For the most part, the Bison players out of the portal are not on the field. That, to me, in this era of college football, you can't have that, in my opinion. That would be one.
The portal guys being Marcus Gully, Carson Williams.
Isaac Zedeca, we haven't seen play yet. No. Backup lineman who came from Missouri. You need to right. You need to see. I think you're talking about in the short term impact guys that can help you, and they're there. Kolpack, we know it. There are thousands of players out there. I
think you got to be better at that. Yep, no question.
And I think honestly, SDSU is banking on this class of 6-year guys. You mentioned, was it 15, 16 guys?
10 guys.
10 guys.
10 guys, all starters.
All starters. That's what I meant, the number. I think they have that number, though, don't they? About 15
no,
or
10
6-year guys?
10 6-year guys.
That are all starters. On the Bison side of things, maybe you have that conversation about those guys. How many do you actually need or want to have come back in 2024?
If you're a 6-year guy, you need to be an impact guy.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's look at NDSU 6-year guys last year. Cody Mauk, Nash Jensen, Spencer Wagee, Michael Tutsi, Dawson Weber. Those are impact guys.
Those are the guys that South Dakota State has this year.
Correct. Yep. That's to me, I don't know how you fix that in a 6 to 7 month span, to me, unless you find some absolute home runs in the portal. I don't know about that. SDSU, I think, will take a step back.
I would imagine if you're Matt Entz, you are thinking about these things for the past month.
Have to see the talent level on the team and say, okay, this is where we're at, and this is where we need to get. Look at Montana State.
Look what Craig Bohl did after 2009.
There was
he did it the high school way, but there wasn't a real portal thing going on.
No. I mean, even look at Montana State. They went and got Julian Davis from Wisconsin. He's now Vieg's top guy. I mean,
he's pretty good.
They're
he's
there.
Good.
I mean, I would imagine the approach to the portal may have to change. And I think you even championed this a while ago about having a staff member that maybe they do. I don't know.
Maybe
that's dedicated to that.
Who's the best linebacker in the portal out there?
And find a way to get him.
Give me 5 guys.
Yeah. Find a way to get him here.
Here's your 5.
Yeah.
Okay, this guy might be going to Arkansas, but this guy might be FCS possibilities. Mm-hmm. He's gotten some bites there, but nobody's offered.
Yep. That's the name of the game.
That's 2023, right?
Yeah. Now we're talking about 2024. That's the name of the game because it's not going anywhere. And for people asking me about the extra years, we got 2 more years of this, 24 and 25. This isn't going anywhere for a while about the bonus years because that started with the 2020 incoming class.
Yeah, and like I've said on this podcast, it's kind of interrupted your development of players.
No doubt.
Your flow. Your flow of
the natural order of things.
Natural order, yes.
It's of how I'm coming in as a true freshman. I believe maybe by my 3rd year I can make an impact, and now that's being stunted. Because
to your 4th year, because there's a 6-year guy.
Or even longer. Yeah. I mean, there's going to be some decisions coming up here in the next month with the Bison football roster of guys like, well, you know what? Maybe I am going to come back. That for a redshirt freshman now, Kolpack, or a sophomore saying, well, wait a minute. Now I'm going to have to wait 2 more years to play? I don't know if I'm willing to do that, especially when you have a readily accessible door to walk through and play right away somewhere else.
Yep.
That's the rub of what's happening right now. Not just at NDSU, but everywhere in college football. That's the hard part you have to deal with right now. I don't know. I don't know how you fix that either. But it's going to be awfully interesting to see what happens over the next month. Our guy Craig Bohl always told me to remember November, and I can't remember a November as packed and as loaded as this for NDSU football. Can you?
No. I mean, not in the championship era.
Not with what it's at stake either. This can go, to me, one of 3 ways. Either they get hot, play an unbelievable game, and maybe earn a seed. They go
2-1,
1-2 or 2-1 down the stretch and get into the playoffs and are playing Thanksgiving weekend, or they lose all 3. And we're talking a whole different story, and they're out of it before Thanksgiving even hits. All those things, I think all 3 are reasonable that are on the table, in my opinion. I don't know about you.
No, there's no question. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, you're playing 3 good teams.
All of them are trending up in
the right time. And you've lost to USD and UND. Yeah. And this could be the first time the Bison lose to all Dakotas since 1962.
The Bison were winless that year. They were 0-10. That's
Bob Danielson was the head coach.
That's right before the run began in the 60s.
Before I was born, Dom. That's how long it was. Oh, my God.
61 years ago. Oh. It's the last time if this happens on Saturday. Real quick before we go, after we did this podcast last week when we saw the rankings come out, and then right on cue, two teams that were ranked there. Western Carolina lost. South Dakota lost. Montana State lost. How does that change in your mind? We're going to do our bracketology on Saturday morning, but I was never a believer in Western Carolina. I'm certainly not a believer in Incarnate Word.
No.
Does that, if Idaho finishes 9-2, they win their last three, do they have grounds to be the 2 seed over Montana State in your mind?
At 9-2? Well, we'll see about the Brawl of the Wild. You're assuming Montana State wins that game.
Beats Montana, right.
I would say head-to-head, yeah, absolutely.
Montana's just out there, Kolpack. They have Sacramento State on Saturday, and they're just sitting there like, hey, no one's talking about us. No one's talking about us. They could earn the 2 seed out of this when we get to November 18th, which is crazy because didn't we have Bobby Houck done at Montana?
And then if you're NDSU and you get in the playoffs, you want to be on that side of the bracket.
On the other side of South Dakota State. Absolutely. I think they would do that too, by the way. I think they would.
I think this team is good enough to win that side of the bracket. I do in the FCS. We're talking about all this doom and gloom, yet this team is good enough given the right matchups.
Kleiman always used to tell us, it's about matchups. If you get that right
this team is good enough for the right matchups to get to Frisco.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Depending on exactly who you're playing.
Yeah.
If you got a Sacramento State in the quarterfinal round or the second round, I like their chances on that one. Just let's see what happens. And then if it's Incarnate Word or whoever, you know what I mean?
Everybody out there who has tickets to Frisco, don't give them up yet. I mean, there's
yet?
Oh, absolutely not.
What happens if it's an ugly game on Saturday? Then you think
it doesn't matter.
No, okay.
No, it doesn't matter.
They just got to get in.
Yep.
Well, that's the hard part, just getting in, because what they have left is going to be incredibly difficult here over the next 3 weeks. And the other big game, we're going to pick it on Saturday. Keep our eyes on this one, Kolpack, is South Dakota and Southern Illinois. I'm really interested on how that one materializes on Saturday.
Yeah, big game for South Dakota that the season doesn't continue to go south.
And UND's got USD a week from now. That one could be for potential playoff spot.
Is that down there?
It is in Vermilion, which UND has not won in Vermilion in the Division I area yet. So, and I know it's not been a whole lot of games, but they still haven't won down there yet. So, something to keep an eye on for Saturday. Again, game day forecast as we look at my Storm Tracker app for Saturday is looking fantastic right now. Right now it says 54 degrees, mostly sunny, winds south to southwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour. So
sounds like a great November college football day.
Exactly right. A fantastic day for college football. Don't forget, of course, we've got Bison Game Day live on Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Actually, Hot Mike will be down there as well. We'll be live tomorrow, Friday, from 9 to 11. We're filled with some fun guests at Dana J. Dykehouse Stadium. And then Kolpack, Logan, Kyle, and myself for Bison Game Day. What am I forgetting?
And to wrap this up, I will leave you with this quote.
Okay.
Coach, or Bobby Knight to reporter. Coach, what did you think about your team's execution this evening? Knight, I'm for it.
Jackson didn't have a good game.
Next question. I'm waiting for that to happen. Would Matt Entz do that to me?
I don't think
Cam Miller Miller didn't have a good game. Next question.
I don't think he would say he didn't have a good game. He might yell at you, next question. Oh, that was so good. Literally, I've been here 6 weeks. Like, this guy's been here for 20 years. He just got yelled at by Bob. Oh, it was fantastic. And again, the game kicks off at 2 o'clock. Coverage on WDAY. You can stream it as well at WDAY Plus. Should be a great day for football between the Bison and the Jackrabbits. The 20th meeting for the Dakota Marker. The Bison lead the Marker series 10-9, a win by the Jacks, and we're tied up at 10. For Jeff Kolpack, I'm Dom Izzo. Thanks so much for listening to the Kolpack and Izzo podcast, brought to you by Gate City Bank.